Mirage players, good God, you guys are eating good. And well, for the other players who decided to use the Eclipse Helminth, well...
And this one is eating the poop all over the place. Huh?
What's good, folks? It's WARFRAME here with a new Warframe video talking about the new Mirage changes. Most importantly, with Eclipse. Now, for those using Eclipse on Mirage, well, of course, you're getting the best of the best when it comes to Eclipse. Eclipse is no longer dependent on your light surroundings, nor the intensity. It is now a tap versus hold cast, which is 10 times better, sure. The Helminth version is gutted beyond belief. I feel like it's not even worth at this point. And for anyone saying, oh, Eclipse is so much better than Roar, just because you gave us the ability to switch between both light and dark Eclipse, you didn't have to gut the ability like that. Like, let's be honest, who in their right mind is going to use the damage reduction? Except for that one crazy person. Just ignore him, all right? But seriously, whoever is deciding to put Eclipse on their Warframe, they're just there for the damage buff. Who cares about the damage reduction, right? The only one person who's probably going to use the damage reduction is that one Inaros player. It's like, but I'm tanky now, look. He doesn't count. Again, I'm just saying, damage is what we want Eclipse for. So the Helminth nerf for Eclipse is just uncalled for, and it's horrible. So here, listen. 300% strength build on a Helminth version Eclipse is still weaker than Garuda's passive. Just think about that for a second. So the first thing that you're going to do as a sane individual playing Mirage, you're going to go into options. You're going to go into invert tap hold abilities, scroll onto Mirage, and switch it to inverted. This will make it so that when you click Eclipse, it's instantly the damage buff. Because clearly, when we tap the ability, we want damage reduction right away. Very smart. Because only weirdos will want to have damage reduction as their first cast. Did they change the description of Eclipse? Let's have a look. Tap, temporarily reduce damage. Lunatic. Switch it. Increase Mirage's weapon damage. For the first time, it actually says weapon damage. That's pretty huge. Unfortunately, it's not stated what type of weapon damage we're getting. It is a damage multiplier, similar to before, but a final weapon damage multiplier, for those who didn't know. Meaning, it is applied after all the built-up multipliers. That's what makes Eclipse very powerful. And that's all that matters. Damage reduction doesn't matter. Now, they also added ability synergy, because Eclipse only is supposed to affect weapons. However, on Mirage herself, it affects Prism. Prism still has the same properties as before, where it scales damage based on the number of lasers hits, but now is no longer dependent on your light source or surroundings. But it has a 2 times damage multiplier when you have Eclipse activated on its light form, and it's halved when it's on its damage reduction form. Because lunatics do that. Damage form Eclipse, that's the way it goes. And the damage scaling that Prism gets from Eclipse is a 2 times damage multiplier. Unfortunately, this is not affected by strength, so no matter how much strength you pump in to buff Eclipse, Eclipse will not increase the damage past that 2 times multiplier. So that's pretty much what changed with Eclipse and Mirage, of course. Here is a proper damage chart comparison. Let's have a look. Strength at 300% with both Roar and Eclipse. Both of these bring you up to 190% damage. But now let's have a look at the different types of damage comparisons. With raw damage, Eclipse beats Roar. Barely. As you can see, it's minus 50. That's the difference. However, when it comes to Roar with a faction multiplier and comparing it with damage over time, of course, Roar completely wipes the floor with Eclipse. This is the damage comparison now. What I'm saying is, for Helminth, well, for some builds, when I say some builds, like very, very niche builds, Eclipse will be better by a very small margin. But in overall gameplay, you have other forms of damage buffs, from Roar, Zanta's Whisper, just armor stripping your targets, or even debuffs. You get what I'm saying. There's so many different ways we can increase our damage. So, with the recent Mirage buff, I have changed a few builds. For those who remember, recently, actually quite recently, I released a Prism Mirage NUKE build, and that used Roar. For those who don't know, Roar applies separate and unique damage bonuses, which is actually multiplicative to the Prism damage with all its laser beams. And that one did do quite a bit of damage, and I did test without any armor strip the difference between Eclipse and Roar, and Roar still outperformed Eclipse buffing Prism. And then I thought to myself, what if I enhance that damage in a certain way? Because Roar is really good, but this is with armor. What if I try to take armor out of the equation and just deal way more raw damage? And that's why I decided to use Terrify. But then Terrify also comes with a few caveats. Number 1, it is very expensive to cast. Number 2, it makes enemies run away from you. And number 3, it does require a decent amount of range to target a decent group of enemies. Number 3, it has an enemy cap, which then scales with strength. So these 4 things were holding me back slightly, and I had to figure out a way how to balance all of these 4 things while still dealing a lot of damage with Prism, maintaining my energy, and killing enemies pretty quickly. So that's exactly what I've done with this loadout. And one of the main things that did help me out in making this build possible were number 1, the Grimoire, the Favonius Codex, Archon Shards, and a specific companion. First, let's start off with the Archon Shards. Number 1 thing you gotta have on Mirage is casting speed, and this time I decided to go with Tau Forge casting speed. This gives me 75% casting speed increase with these 2 Tau Forge shards, which is actually pretty good. And I'm pairing that up with the Madurai Focus School with its power transfer. By performing a transference real quick, you gain 50% casting speed. So this is like 2 regular shards. And then the rest of my Archon shards are going to be duration. Surprising, not strength, right? No, duration. Duration is actually way more important here than strength because you have so many other strength modifiers coming from literally everywhere. So at the end of the day, Mirage didn't need additional strength with Archon shards, but duration utility. But of course, the last one should definitely be a Tau Forge just to even everything out. All right, here we are in Steel Path, and you can see the tentacle thing above Mirage's head, so some of you already know where this is going. But not only that, it's also going to offer us some additional utility besides proccing Archon Stretch. So before I start the DPS, I will perform 2 Void Slings, and look at that, fully stripped, everything is dead. With 1 cast, which is insanely strong. I need some energy, toss my Grimoire's alternate fire. Everything is dead. So another good thing here is that Mirage has the blinding effect with her Prism when it detonates. Terrify will crowd control enemies, so this is one way to survive. And the other way is, of course, moving. Move a lot. Her first ability confuses enemies, so they don't know who to attack. And notice how we don't have any issues with energy at all because of the setup that I'm doing. Look at that. We're just walking into every room, casting Terrify when needed. You see how I was a bit too slow there? Because I didn't use the transference. Because every 20 seconds, I know it's going to be annoying, but perform a quick transference, and there, it just feels a lot better. Look at that. Dead. Dead. And I'm spamming Terrify here, which is crazy. See how duration is so important on this type of build? Because then we can have our prison up for a long time. Oh, it's violence. God dang it. Alright. Magus lock down him and just kill him with a big weapon. There you go. He's dead. Fairly easily. If it wasn't violence, we would use our 4th ability, but violence does silence you, so which is unfortunate. Okay, I'm here demonstrating the gun build, where a lot of people are like, oh no, Mirage is too friggin' weak, she can't survive, how can she kill anything, she's a squishy little Warframe. All right, we're gonna have this overlay up because I have no idea what's gonna be happening, because it's just going to be death after death after death after death after death. Yeah, this is pretty much the gun build Mirage. It is really stupid, it is devastating, and you can pretty much do everything. And it's using Nourish. Oh no, they nerfed Nourish. How could I ever use that ability again? Nah. Nourish changes were nothing. Eclipse Helminth changes were disgusting. That's a nerf. The Nourish changes were nothing. Barely noticeable. Like when I say barely noticeable, like you wouldn't even know that Nourish got changed. But take a look at our Eclipse, 761 damage multiplier. That's huge. Pretty solid, pretty brain dead. Xmas here. That guy's dead. That Eximus is dead. That Eximus is dead. Oh my god, Mirage, you guys are eating good. Alright, here we are back at the Orbiter and taking a look at the first build, the Prism build. As you know, the Helminth ability is Terrify, and it's just there for the armor strip. Literally nothing else, just there for the armor strip, so we can boost the damage of Prism. So let's have a look at the build. We're going to start off, of course, with a bare bones build, and these are the polarities that I'll be using. Now, starting off with the aura, it's going to be Corrosive Projection. Why Corrosive Projection? Because this is going to be a base strength build, and Terrify needs to have 168% strength to fully strip, and with Corrosive Projection in the aura, it goes down to 128. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, we have two conditional strength increases. One coming from my focus school, Matter Eye, aka Chatter Eye, and the other one is from Molt Augmented. After getting 250 kills, you gain a 60% strength increase. And even with the 60% increase that is coming from Molt Augmented, it's still not enough to do a full strip with a single cast of Terrify. Hence why Corrosive Projection. And the base strength will make sense. All of this is to balance out everything. And you may have noticed that my duration is at 140%. This is, of course, due to the 3 red shards on the build. Now, to increase that duration, I will only be using Primed Continuity. Primed Continuity and the duration shards on the build will give me 7.8 seconds on Prism. This is a very large uptime for this ability. Of course, if you had 3 Town Forge, I think it will go to 8 seconds. Now, to help with my energy, I will be running Prime Flow. This will give me 641 energy and Equilibrium. This will convert health orbs into energy pickups. And for consistent health orb drops, this will be coming from my companion. And now we're lacking range. To increase the range, I'll be running Archon Stretch, again, Companion Synergy, and Augur Reach. Both of these will give me 175% energy, which is 26 meters on Terrify, which is huge. And it does, of course, increase the laser beam length. For survivability, I will be running Rolling Guard. Then the final mod here is going to be Precision Intensify. This will give me 90% strength on my 4th ability, which happens to be Prism. This is a massive DPS increase. So we have armor strip and more damage on Prism. These are the main things that we need because Eclipse is not going to go over that 2 times damage multiplier. So strength isn't a necessity for Eclipse. And then finally, the best mod in the game, because spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. And of course, the final arcane is going to be Arcane Energize. And this is how the Prism build is going to look like. However, if you want more consistency, you can use Umbral Intensify, but Precision Intensify is way more damage for this loadout. And you don't need to worry about not having efficiency because we have Equilibrium, Archon Stretch, Energize, and 2 other increases. One of them is from the Favonius Codex, aka the Grimoire. Using Zanta's Invocation, when you hit enemies with the alternate fire, it stacks up to 10 times of energy regen, which is insanely good. However, if you don't like the energy regen, which is kind of weird, you can always use Invocation to give you efficiency. And finally, you do have a Canticle. This gives you universal orb drops. All you have to do is tag enemies with your alternate fire on the Grimoire, kill them with your abilities, and boom, they drop these universal health orbs, or universal orbs in general. And the arcane is Conjunction Voltage. This is only to give me multi-shot when you proc electricity, and the alternate fire and the weapon itself is electric. And then our companion, which is going to be the Duriga. Y'all know the synergy here using Arc Coil and Archon Stretch gives you that energy regen on your Warframe. All you need to have is Arc Coil, Guardian for survivability, and Synth Deconstruct. And finally, we do have Mystic Bond. This unfortunately doesn't fully stop your Prism from draining energy, but it does help with your other ability casts. And of course, Duplex Bond. This is also a nice boost to energy drops. So all of this is helping me with energy. This is how I finally managed to get a working Terrify Prism loadout without any issues. And of course, using the Praetos here, just for the sprint speed and parkour velocity, which ties into Mirage's passive, which all has to do with some parkour velocity. Now let's move on to the other build. The gun build is going to be very, very powerful. It's going to either use 2 Helminth abilities. You have your Nourish or Silence. The Silence one is slightly different, but it's just for more consistency when it comes to Acolytes. But then Nourish is going to be way better overall for pretty much everything when it comes to your weapon loadouts. Now in the aura, we're also going to use Corrosive Projection because, hey, negative 18% armor, that's a huge buff to our damage. And in the XLS, best mod in the game, because, you know. For our strength increases, we're going to have modded and conditional strength increases. We're going to start off with Blind Rage, Transient Fortitude, and move over to Umbral Intensify, and finally Augur Secrets. This is going to be a 322% modded strength increase, and then slap on Molt Augmented. All of this is to buff Eclipse's damage. As you can see, this is huge. And for the augments, I will be using Hall of Malevolence. This gives my Mirage clones even more damage. This is a damage multiplier. So we have Eclipse and we have Hall of Malevolence. And then to buff my Mirage clones again with Eclipse, we'll be using Total Eclipse because this affects allies and the clones count as allies. Well, this is a nice damage combo. As you can see, we did tank a little bit of duration thanks to Transient Fortitude, so we're going to counteract that with Narrow Minded. This gives us 212% duration. This is massive. And then the final mod, boom, slap on Augur Message for even more duration. All of this is to upkeep our buffs so we can maintain them for as long as possible while we just go out and kill enemies. And that's all we're going to focus on, killing enemies. Then the final arcane is dependent on what type of weapon you're using. Using primaries, go Arcane Acceleration. Secondaries, Arcane Velocity. However, if you feel like you're lacking survivability and you're fine with other fire rate increases, then use whatever arcane you want. All I did was remove Augur Message for Archon Stretch because we want to have 15.8 meters on Eclipse. This way you can affect enemies more consistently, moving in and out, stunning them. Why am I using Silence? Because this is also really good when you're farming for Steel Essence, and if Violence or any annoying acolyte shows up, this completely nullifies their abilities and also nullifies Eximus abilities. This is why Silence is very strong. Otherwise, same concept for the build. However, we're going to be changing our companion for the gun build, because for the gun build you'll be using the Worm Prime. However, if you're doing the Silence loadout, then yeah, just stick to the Doriga. But for the Nourish build, we use the Worm Prime because not only do we get Negate, but we also get Reinforced Bond and Tenacious Bond combo. That's going to be very huge. This is fire rate, and this is a crit damage increase. We also have some shield regen, and Negate prevents a status effect proc. As you may have noticed, I'm not running Rolling Guard or anything on the build. So if you feel like you need additional survivability, you could swap out Matarai to Vazarin. Taking a look at the weapon that I use for the showcase, the Kuva Tonkor. Kuva Tonkor here is Toxin, because Toxin will allow you to form 3 combinations: Corrosive, Viral, and Gas. And if you're fighting Corpus, boom, the Toxin alone is massive buff. Since I was fighting Grenier, I did use Prime Bane of Grenier, which is a boon to our initial damage and damage over time. And that damage over time is, of course, coming from Hunter Munitions. We have Corrosive and Viral. The Corrosive damage is for that initial impact of damage, and when their health is debuffed, Hunter Munitions just cuts them off. So this is just for killing stragglers. And this is going to be a nice combo to fight against Acolytes and every type of enemy unit that you'll be facing, mostly armored units. Base damage is, of course, coming from Primary Merciless. You kill, and it builds up stacks, and it gives you reload speed. And of course, I added more reload speed here just to help this weapon, because we only get 1 bullet in the magazine, but it has a decent amount of ammo regen. Firestorm to increase its explosion radius, crit chance, crit damage, and that 1 elemental mod to make corrosive since it's innate toxin. And since I have vigilante supplies, this is also getting boosted from my companion's weapon with the other vigilante set bonuses. And make sure you have the crit chance mod here so you can buff Tenacious Bond on your companion. Alright, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mirage, the newly improved Mirage that destroys and shreds everything in sight. Always be on the move with Mirage. Anyway, folks, that has been it for me. I do hope you've enjoyed and learned something from this video. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.